I still remember the way they looked at me, like I didn't belong, like I didn't belong, like I'd stepped into a world where I wasn't invited. It was a chilly afternoon when I walked into that luxury boutique, heart racing, hands slightly trembling. I'd admired that place from afar for years. The glass doors, the marble floors, the golden logo above the entrance, it all felt like a dream. And that day I finally had the courage to walk in. I wore my favorite black coat, freshly ironed jeans and clean white sneakers. I wasn't dressed fancy, but I looked put together, confident, or at least I tried to be. The moment I stepped inside, the air changed. The soft chime of the door barely faded when I felt the shift. One saleswoman glanced at me and looked away like I was invisible. Another whispered something to her coworker and chuckled. I heard it clear as day. She's probably lost. I kept walking, pretending not to notice. But I noticed everything. The way no one offered to help, the way they followed me around like I might steal something. The way they smiled at the other shoppers, but not at me. I should have walked out. But something made me stay. Something deep in my chest whispered, not this time. What they didn't know, what they couldn't even imagine, was that I wasn't just a shopper. I wasn't there to browse. I wasn't there to be seen. I was there for something much bigger. Because in just a few days, I was about to own everything they stood on. I didn't grow up around marble floors or golden logos. I grew up in a one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint on the walls and a leaky faucet that never got fixed. My mom and I shared a fold-out couch in the living room for most of my childhood. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses during the day and waitressing at night, just to keep the lights on. We didn't have much, but she always made sure I had what I needed. Not what I wanted, those were luxuries we couldn't afford. Most of my clothes came from church donation bins or thrift stores. I still remember the sting of walking into school wearing shoes 2 sizes too big and jeans that had someone else's name written on the inside tag. Kids laughed, called me hand-me-down girl, said I smelled like old closets. I learned early how to pretend their words didn't hurt, but they did. Every single time. Still, I had one thing no one could take from me, my mind. Books were my escape. While other kids played outside, I was buried in the pages of library books. I read everything I could get my hands on. Biographies, history, science, business, anything that made the world feel bigger than the 4 walls we lived in. I knew I was different. Not just because I was black in a mostly white school, but because I believed I could be something more. I saw it so clearly in my mind. Me, standing tall, running a company, building something from nothing. I had no reason to believe it would happen. But I did. I was the only black girl in the advanced classes. And it wasn't because someone opened the door for me, it was because I kicked it down myself. But even then, teachers looked at me sideways. If I answered a question too fast, they double-checked it. If I aced a test, they assumed I cheated. I remember one teacher pulling me aside and saying, "You're smart for someone like you." Someone like me. I carried that sentence in my chest for years. It burned. But it also fueled me. I stopped waiting for people to recognize my worth. I worked twice as hard, stayed twice as late, read twice as much. I learned that the world wasn't going to give me anything. I had to take it. I watched my mom come home every night, exhausted, shoes in one hand, bills in the other, and still she smiled at me. Still she encouraged me. She never complained, she never made me feel like we were less than. She just kept going. And so did I. People underestimated me my whole life. They assumed I'd stay quiet, stay small, stay where I came from. But I had different plans. I didn't just want a better life, I needed it. For me. For my mom. For every little girl who looked like me and was told she wasn't enough. I didn't want a handout. I wanted a shot. And I promised myself one day when I got that shot, I'd take it. And I'd never look back. I thought graduating from college would be my ticket out. I had the degree, the ambition, the drive. When I landed my first corporate job, I felt like I had finally made it. I was the first in my family to step into a glass office building wearing a badge with my name on it. At first I was excited just to be there. But that feeling faded quickly. From day one it was clear, I was an outsider. The only black woman on my floor. Everyone smiled at me, but there was always something behind those smiles. I was invited to meetings, but never really heard. I was praised in public, criticized in private, and no matter how hard I worked, how early I showed up, how much I delivered, I could feel it. I wasn't really one of them. The jokes that weren't meant for me, the lunch invitations that never came, the casual way they butchered my name, even after I corrected them 10 times. Still I kept my head down. I told myself just work hard, and they'll see your value. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a major project, months in the making. I had handled the research, the numbers, the reports, but my manager, he took the credit. And when something went wrong, something he overlooked, I became the scapegoat. He stood in that glass conference room, pointing fingers with a polished smile. She must have miscalculated. I looked around, expecting someone to speak up, someone to say, no, she didn't, but no one did. Silence. Just like that, I was let go. No warning, no explanation, just a polite email from HR thanking me for my time. I walked out of that building with my box of things, and my pride crushed under my heels. I cried all the way home. I sat on my couch, with the lights off, staring at the wall, replaying every moment, wondering what I could have done differently. But deep down, I knew the truth. It had never been about my work, it had been about me. About who I was, about who I wasn't. That night, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at someone else's table anymore. No more waiting to be seen. No more shrinking myself to fit into spaces that didn't want me. If no one will open doors for me, I whispered through tears, I'll build my own. That was the moment I stopped being a victim and started becoming something else entirely. After losing that job, I didn't have much. No safety net, no backup plan, just a stubborn refusal to give up. I spent weeks thinking about what I could do, what I wanted to do, what I was good at. One thing was clear, I loved beauty, not the kind sold in fancy magazines or glossy ads. The kind my mom used to make at home with natural ingredients. Oils, shea butter, herbs, simple things that made skin feel alive. So I started small. Really small, my kitchen became my workshop. I bought ingredients with whatever money I had left. I experimented with recipes late into the night. I bottled lotions, whipped creams, and scrubs by hand. I wrote labels with a shaky pen, and packed orders in old boxes. Every day was a struggle. Sometimes I couldn't pay rent on time. Sometimes I stayed up until 3 a.m., mixing batches and responding to customer emails. Some nights I cried, not from sadness, but from exhaustion. The rejections stung the most. I sent samples to stores, no replies. Calls went unanswered. Some even told me my products weren't market ready. But I believed in what I was doing, and slowly things changed. One customer posted a review online, calling my products life-changing. Another shared pictures on Instagram. Then more orders came in. Real people, real stories. Mothers who said my creams helped their children's dry skin. Women who told me they finally felt beautiful in their own skin. That was everything. I poured every dollar I made back into the business, buying better packaging, creating a website, learning marketing from free videos online. I studied how to reach people, how to tell a story, how to build a brand that wasn't just about beauty, but about realness. I worked non-stop, early mornings, late nights, weekends. I was tired, but I was alive. 3 years later, my little kitchen project wasn't so little anymore. My brand started getting attention, local boutiques, magazines, even national retailers. Suddenly, the small online store I built out of scraps and sweat was being talked about. But the best part, through all the ups and downs, I never forgot why I started. Not for fame, not for money. For every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. For every little girl who looked like me, and needed to see that it was possible. After 3 years of grinding, I thought I had finally cracked the code. My small brand was growing fast, and I wanted to take it to the next level. So I reached out to a major luxury distributor, the kind whose name alone could open every door in the industry. I prepared everything carefully: samples, business plans, projections. I imagined my products on those shiny shelves, reaching thousands more people. But weeks went by. No replies. Then vague emails. Then silence. They ignored me. I was crushed. How could they overlook what I'd built? How could they act like I didn't exist? And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, a competitor tried to steal my formulas. Someone I thought was an ally. I found out because customers started asking why their orders were delayed, why my products looked different online. My heart broke. I wanted to give up. I sat on my floor, staring at the empty bottles, wondering if this fight was worth it. But then I heard my mom's voice in my head, clear as day. Don't let them define your worth, baby. You're bigger than their opinions. I wiped my tears away, and made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for anyone's permission. I was going to take control, completely. I rebranded my company with a fresh look, a new mission, and a powerful story: real beauty, real people, real power. I ditched the middlemen. No more distributors, no more gatekeepers. I went direct to consumer. It was risky. It meant building my own website, handling every order myself, and competing with giants. But it worked. People connected with the story behind the brand. They loved the authenticity, the honesty. Within a year, my profits doubled. The fire inside me burned hotter than ever. Because now, no one could ignore me. No one could take away what I'd built, and no one could stop me. I found myself back at that same luxury boutique, the one where they had ignored me, whispered behind my back, and made me feel invisible. This time I dressed casually. No fancy clothes, no designer bags, just me, walking through those glass doors with my head held high. I wanted to browse, no agenda, no expectations. But the moment I stepped inside, the cold stares returned. The staff barely acknowledged me. Their eyes followed me around the store, suspicious and guarded, like I was a threat. I smiled politely, but inside, I felt the familiar sting of their judgment. I picked up a delicate handbag, running my fingers over the leather. A saleswoman finally approached, her tone clipped. "These are quite expensive, ma'am," she said, as if warning me away. I just smiled, and said nothing. Then my eyes drifted up to the sign above the door. It was the same company I'd been quietly negotiating with for months. The one I was about to buy. A strange feeling settled in my chest. Power, irony, satisfaction. They had no idea who I was. No idea that I wasn't just some casual shopper. I was the woman who was about to own their entire company, and in that moment, I felt something shift, because all those years of struggle, the bullying, the doubting, the fighting, it had all led here, right to this boutique. Right to this very moment. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the final acquisition papers spread out in front of me. My pen hovered over the signature line, heart pounding. This was it. The moment I had dreamed of, worked for, fought through every doubt, and every door slammed in my face. I signed. With that simple stroke of ink, I became the majority owner of the luxury brand, the very company that had once ignored me, dismissed me, and whispered behind my back. A few days later, I returned to the boutique, but this time I wasn't alone. I walked in with my assistant, confident and calm. The manager glanced up and froze. I could see the recognition flicker in her eyes when she saw me, not just a customer, but the woman from the company-wide memo. I smiled, and extended my hand. "I'm your new boss," I said softly. The room fell silent. Then apologies started pouring out, stammered words of regret, promises to do better, pleas for a second chance. But I just listened. Because I knew something important. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. About showing that no matter where you come from, no matter what they say, you have the power to rewrite your story. And that day, I owned more than just a company. I owned my truth. I didn't fire anyone. That wasn't the point. I didn't walk in with a list of people to fire. That would have been easy, maybe even satisfying for a moment. But I knew this wasn't about revenge. This was about something bigger, something lasting. Instead, I made one thing very clear from the moment I took over: things were going to change. Not just on the surface, not just in the brochures or public statements, but from the inside out. Diversity training wasn't a suggestion, it was mandatory. For everyone. From the sales staff who greeted customers to the regional directors who ran entire districts, from the front desk all the way to the top floor executives who'd sat in boardrooms, making decisions that rarely included people who looked like me. Every single person had to go through it. I wanted them to understand what respect really meant, not the polite smiles or carefully chosen words. I wanted them to feel it. To learn the weight of a gaze, the sting of being dismissed, the strength it takes to walk into a space where you're constantly told, without words, that you don't belong. I hired the best team of educators, speakers, and real people with real stories. I sat in on the sessions myself, not as their boss, but as someone who had lived it. I listened to their discomfort. I watched eyes widen, walls break down, and hearts slowly open. Some people grumbled. Some rolled their eyes at first, but over time, you could feel the shift. A quiet hum of awareness, growing louder every day. And then, one day, I met her. She was a floor supervisor in one of the downtown stores, sharp, kind, full of quiet confidence. A young black woman, maybe in her late 20s. I saw something in her. Not just talent, but resilience. A familiar fire. The way she carried herself reminded me of who I used to be before the world tried to shrink me. She told me how she often felt overlooked in meetings. How customers sometimes assumed she wasn't in charge, but she never let it break her. She kept working, kept leading, kept showing up. I promoted her to regional manager, not as a handout, not as a symbol, because she earned it. Because she was ready, and because I believed in making space for women like her to rise, not just in whispers or shadows, but boldly and unapologetically. That moment meant everything to me. Not just because it was a step forward for her, but because it was a promise kept to the younger version of myself who once sat in offices and classrooms, waiting to be seen. The company began to evolve, slowly, but surely. We overhauled our marketing. Gone were the photos of one type of beauty, one narrow vision of what elegance should look like. We showcased diversity, skin tones, body types, hair textures, genders, cultures, real people, real stories. Our message became clear: beauty doesn't live in glass cases or hide behind designer labels, it lives in truth, in representation, in boldness. And the response? It was incredible. Customers noticed. People began walking into our stores and saying, "This feels different. This feels like me." For the first time, I felt like the brand stood for something more than luxury. It stood for belonging. And every time I walked through those boutique doors, especially the one where it all began, I felt something deep and powerful in my chest. A quiet thunder. I remembered the way they used to look at me. The whispered comments. The cold stares. The assumptions. I remembered the weight of it all, how it felt to be seen as invisible. And now, I owned the building. Literally. I had the deed, the title, the keys. But more than that, I had changed the energy in those walls. What was once a place of exclusion had become a symbol of possibility. Sometimes, when I visited, I would stand by the tall window that overlooked the city below. I'd watch people move, cars, buses, strangers living their lives, and I'd smile. Not because I'd won, but because I didn't let it break me. Because when they tried to shut me out, I didn't just find another door. I built a new place entirely. A place where people like me didn't have to shrink to fit in. A place where we could take up space. Boldly. Fully. Without apology. So to anyone listening right now, anyone who's ever felt like they weren't enough, who's been judged, ignored, or told to quiet down, I want you to hear me. People will doubt you. They will judge you. They will ignore you. Let them. Your power isn't in how they see you. It's in how you see yourself. Don't let the world define your worth, write your own definition. And if this story moved you, even just a little, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that their dreams are still possible. Your support helps us tell more stories that matter, stories that need to be heard, because there are so many more voices out there still waiting for their moment, and together, we can help them rise.